Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hey folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. A special Wednesday. I know I don't normally get on the Wednesday, but this is a special for the conference, and to discuss it, I've got two of my great buddies and good buddies of the show. None other than the Paisley Mohawk himself, all the way from Greece, and Gareth, my friend, the Grouse Beater from sunny downtown Edinburgh, are joining with me to discuss the magnificent ALBA Conference at the weekend. And of course, we have our first and honorary member of the ALBA Party, none other than our friend and compadre, Gareth. Congratulations, Gareth. You well deserved, should I say, sir? Well deserved.
Well, thank you. I have to be honest and say I'm quite embarrassed about it because I misunderstood. I saw Alex Salmond was the man presenting it, and I assumed it was SNP in a magnanimous act of reconciliation, but it turned out to be the new ALBA Party. And anyway, I was on stage, so there's nothing I could do but take the honour, framed honour, out of his hands. Which, by the way, ALBA still had the price on the back of it.
So, you know, that's so when the invoice comes in, you can match them.
Very Scottish.
Very Scottish, yeah. It cost a lot of money, and that's really genuine silver frame.
Well, yeah, it's well deserved, but of course I put that down to your appearances here on the Prism show. I mean, that obviously swung it, I would suggest. What do you think, Iain?
I'm a media celebrity now. Absolutely.
This is the big time, Gareth.
Oh, yeah.
Watch out, Nigel Farage.
Yeah. But Iain, you were watching it like myself from afar. But I can certainly feel, as they say in football parlance, a buzz about the place. And I'm sure Gareth will tell us from his own point of view. But did you get a feeling?
I certainly did. It was quite remarkable. You know, you would think watching it online, you just wouldn't feel, you know, the same as the conference. But it probably wasn't the same as the conference. But there's no doubt it came across, you know, that there was real enthusiasm. There was a real buzz about the place. And I mean, I think there's a number of things got to be said about it. You know, the standard of debate was, in my view, quite outstanding. I mean, Alex Salmond's a great politician, Kenny McCaskill and others. But you saw from the rostrum at that conference that there's a large number of people in ALBA who are very competent people who can speak and argue their case with content. And I mean, I think it really augurs well for the weeks and months ahead, because some of these speeches were quite extraordinary. And, you know, very, very, very good debates.
Yeah, there were some of the speeches were passionate and forceful, absolutely straight from the gut, and from what I would call hard-working, working-class people, and then went on to be profoundly eloquent in what they had to say. So I was impressed by them, especially those who were talking from experience. And one thing I noticed, unlike the previous SNP conference, was no one got booed
exactly
for their opinions, even if they were contrary to the mood of the gathering.
Organising either, you know, people were coming up with real content, real.
Yeah. It was the other thing that was amazing, Gareth. We've lost you again, Iain. Your sound's gone. Yeah. Gareth, was that a lot of these people were first-time speakers? You would never have known it.
Well, that's news to me. I know one or two of them did, as I say, apologise and say, you know, they weren't used to making speeches, and as you would expect, one or two stumbled with something they had to say that was pre-written. It's quite a difficult thing. I mean, I've taught actors how to do this. It's actually quite difficult to read from a prepared page and look at the audience at the same time. You know, drop your eyes for the next. You know, be ahead in the sentences that you're meant to read, and still be able to communicate. If you look at the small speech that I was asked to give, I didn't once look up at the balconies, but you're meant to take in the people on the balconies as well, because they've paid their ticket price.
Well, I'm hoping we've got Ian back on sound. I'm not hearing him yet. Just interrupt.
Well, I can hear.
You're back. You're back.
Right.
You're back.
Well, I'll try and get the picture back as well. Then let's see.
No, we can. You're back again.
Your pictures.
I did mention on the Sunday show that I thought it was very brave, the agenda. Abolishing the monarchy, etc. Bringing, legalising prostitution. I mean, it was really controversial subjects that they weren't scared to address. And I thought the lady who proposed the prostitution resolution gave a very vivid and an excellent speech as to the problems.
And then she began to explain how she had been groomed when she was younger into prostitution, the kind of life that she had to lead. It was an absolutely outstanding piece of reportage, honest to the end point. And I think she got the votes that she was asking for.
She did. I mean, a point not related to that subject, but I think it's worth pointing out because it's a clear contrast. The motion that regarding the banning of protests at Holyrood went through unanimously at the ALBA conference, whereas the same or similar motion at the SNP conference only passed 2-1, which was the clearest signal that there's a large number of people in the SNP quite willing to sacrifice freedom of speech, freedom of choice for others in their desperate bid to say in favour with the cult. Now, these are dangerous people because, no matter who you are or what politics you follow, the minute you're following a path where you're willing to sacrifice those freedoms, then you're opening the door to fascism and all the risks that go with that.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think different.
They've got so many of the SNP politicians as examples to follow. They see SNP remaining silent, days of morale, and they don't say anything. They don't speak out. We all know the Joanna Cherry example, but there's so many other things that have been happening. Have any of you heard anything from our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, saying she was unaware of the proposed ban on demonstrations and public speakers outside our own damn parliament, and is about to jump all over that and get it stopped? Not a word. So, they look at that and think, well, this is what being a team player is about. You swallow your scruples and your conscience.
It goes back to is it Nola? First they came for the communists and I said nothing.
Yep.
And that's what this is. This is the thin end of the wedge. So everyone should be up for this. I mean, my blog was out today. I put out a press release from Kenny McCaskill talking about this very issue of the ban of protesting. And they were on to it, the faithful on Facebook. Oh, I said, this can affect you. This goes over all parties, because it's not just, this is, it's ALBA moaning about the SNP. No, it's not. It's us individuals moaning about the lack of democracy or the trying to silence us. I mean, who would have believed? I mean, all the years we've been associated with the independence movement between us, and I go back to the 70s with the SNP. Who would have believed that the SNP would bring in something like this? It's incredible, Ian. Absolutely incredible and almost unbelievable.
Well, I mean, if somebody had told me that this would happen, I would have just argued completely it's impossible. It would never happen in the SNP. But, I mean, a lot of things have been going on in the SNP in the last few years that I would have also described as quite impossible. And I'm afraid, you know, I don't know what it takes for people in the SNP to recognise what's happened to their party. Because, I mean, it's a very, very different place from when I was involved. I mean, I can't imagine ever anyone in the SNP. Can you imagine Gordon Wilson or, you know, Alex Salmon, for that matter, putting together a campaign where you tried to get a fellow member jailed on a whole basis of false allegation? I mean, it's quite disgusting. And, I mean, people say, well, where's the evidence? The evidence is everywhere about what happened. The stories that were made up have been blown apart. They don't exist. People know, you know, whoever gets accused of sexual harassment for putting a finger through a ring of someone's hair on the lift when the other passengers on the lift couldn't see anything happening. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, you've got to question why nobody in the SNP hierarchy has had a word to say publicly about the jailing of Craig Murray.
Absolutely.
There's a very good instance of something that is absolutely preposterous. I think I've said before that at the very most he should have had a fine, maybe some community work, or a suspended sentence, you know, a suspended month on good behaviour, you know.
But I mean,
as an example to the rest of us. But 8 months in prison for a man of his intellect, I mean, he's not a criminal. He hasn't got any track record, and nothing from the SNP whatsoever. You know, you expect somebody to say, well, he crossed the line, but nevertheless, we are in despair about this judgment.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's
nothing.
That?
So that's not the radical, new, enlightened Scotland that we've been working for, and it's our duty, it falls on us to damn well try and fix it.
Yeah, but I mean, he got 8 months in jail for not naming the alphabet women. The chap in Perth who did name them got 6 months. You know, I mean, come on, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's the other thing that was telling for me between the two conferences which we're comparing here. One, very little's come out about Nicola Sturgeon's speech. I'll come on to that in a minute, but the other one was the nuclear weapons, where people in the SNP actually voted against their motion to get rid of nuclear weapons. Now, the other thing that got me was that there was 534 votes in that motion, 520 for getting rid of them within 3 years, but 14 against getting rid of them. And I thought, in the SNP, but only 534 votes. That's the point. They're meant to have 120,000 members, you know, but only 534 people are there voting. And how many of them are the payrolling?
Yeah, MSPs, their staff.
MSPs, MPs, councillors,
I mean,
SPADs.
They've got 400 councillors, you know. It's
there you go.
A pretty staggering. Nobody will be getting a book for perfect attendance this year from the SNP. But, I mean, it really is ridiculous. But the other thing that depressed the numbers at the SNP conference was undoubtedly the 700 that were at the ALBA conference. And about 500 of them were probably ex-SNP activists, the folk that went to SNP conference who no longer go. You know, so that is another reason why their numbers were so suppressed. You can bet this conference they've got coming up in November, there'll be a 3-line whip for that. You know, they'll be trying to book Ibrox. You know,
you may get an invite.
Well, that's a possibility. You know, but I mean, they'll have to get ready.
The short time that I attended SNP meetings in central Edinburgh, I met quite a few people who thought a referendum should be delayed, you know, beyond 2014, maybe 2016 or 2017. And I was quite tolerant of that. What took me completely by surprise were the few people, and they were not one in number, they were a few people who didn't want independence at all. They thought it was completely unnecessary. And I remember being quite taken aback when I talked to the first one. He was a good businessman. He said, I don't want independence at all. I think that's the wrong thing for Scotland, but I think we should have more powers. And I said, well, maybe you should be in another party, because this is the party re-establishing Scotland's liberty, Scotland as a nationhood. He eventually left. I think he left just after we lost by 6%, not 10. It only needed a 6% swing to get us our independence back. But the others, as far as I know, they're still there and probably think it's a fine thing that we don't have autonomy. So I look at the SNP and think they are endorsing all the negatives, and they're not stepping forward and saying, look, let's stop this bickering, let's stop this getting at each other's throats, because it's not going to work. And then you have the sight recently of our First Minister talking through the camera to Boris in London saying, please, look, we bend to our colonial rule, and we'd very much like you to consider if you might give us another referendum. And she barely got the sentence out when the spokesperson number 10, in addition to press release saying, take a hike. We've told you already. You're not going to get another referendum. So and of course, you then have to ask, what happens next?
No plan B. Well, they wouldn't. She's not allowed a discussion for 4 years. Angus Brendan and prior with Chris McElhenney tried to get, well, let's get a plan B at least. So if plan A doesn't work, she wouldn't allow it to be discussed. So plan A's up. And I said, oh, well,
so who are her anyway. Advisors?
Really?
Who are her advisor, other than Sir Nicholas, the civil servant who organised the attack against using the pound initially as currency, and Foote from the Daily Record, who helped organise the infamous fraudulent vow that she now has head of her communications. When someone who's a leader is confronted by getting the finger from the opposite side, your colleagues get around you immediately behind closed doors and say, we got that wrong. We got the approach wrong. We have to rethink this now, and we have to get these guys on the back foot. How are we going to do this? We should have worked this out in advance. But there's nothing. You don't hear of that. You just say, well, she's asked nicely, so maybe she should ask nicely another time.
You've not mentioned, Gareth, the prelude to this, where she was reported in the newspapers on several occasions, basically saying, there's no way Boris can say no to me. It's morally impossible for him to say all that. So you can only presume that when he, stood on her yesterday, that she was in some state of shock last night. But I'll tell you now, she wasn't, because it was all flummery. It was all acting. It was all coming up with this false narrative. She knows fine well, Boris. I'd be more worried if Boris said yes. Then we'd be real trouble, because we'd be stuck with a flawed referendum and a very, very dodgy franchise, worse than 2014. If Boris was smart, he would say yes. That would
if it happened, had it happened, Iain, with Alex Salmond still as First Minister, he would have said, that's terrific, Boris. Now, I have this document here, which is the new accord we want with London, and I'll come down immediately and we can start negotiations. He'd have been ready and well planned.
Yep.
But we've got somebody who's just completely out of their depth. And I really think she's scared of independence. I think she's scared of all the repercussions, the reorganisation that would have to take place. And the more she delays it, the more her own destiny can be fixed in some other way, and maybe she can hand over the baton to someone else. But being at the ALBA conference, and just, I was kept to the side. I wasn't allowed in. They kept me at the side of the wings. And then when Alex Salmond said, look, our first honorary person is going to go to Gareth, who's better known as Grouse Beater, the door was swung open. I pushed out there onto the stage. and it was quite overwhelming. And when I said that as I came in the front door with a mask on and the dark glasses and the hat and the coat with my head bowed, and I was recognized, and this woman, this lovely woman, came rushing at me and threw her arms around me and started to weep. And I had to console her and tell her it was flesh and blood and not to worry. I meant it when I said to those, to the indigenous people of Scotland, that it was the friendliest political party I'd encountered. Unlike the SNP, who've changed their character, their persona entirely.
Yeah.
Now, there are good people in the SNP. I don't want to generalize. I know there are good people, you know, I'm still talking to them. They're still talking to me. But
I think you're being,
it is dominated by one person.
I think you're being unnecessarily modest here, because I have to say to you, Gareth, I have had a number of women on my blog all claiming to be that woman. So there must be several women involved in this, you know. I mean, I'll name them. There's one called Alison. There's one called Denise Finlay. You know, so I can't remember the other one. I've got three that have claimed to be that woman. So you must have been moving with women constantly hugging you all the way up.
My wife, I told my wife, who's in the Shetlands at the moment on a sketching expedition, and she said, Gareth, I've known for years women just want to cuddle you when they see you.
Well, I think if I went
anyway, that's beside the point.
If you go to the SNP conference, I'd be worried about getting cuddled. I wouldn't know. You think, wait a minute, no, stand back. Just stand back. You wouldn't know who was cuddling you.
So, I wouldn't let
anyway,
it in my neck, I can tell you.
No.
It was a very friendly conference there, and I was genuinely impressed by, as Iain says, the openness and the honesty of the speeches, and it was extraordinarily well handled. You know, I kept thinking, will the communications system break down? You know, will the giant screen that's got information and videos behind us on the stage, will that break down? It went absolutely smoothly, which was terrific.
I mean, it was such a contrast.
For a new organisation, you know.
No, but in recent years, the big challenge at SNP conferences for the average delegate is getting anywhere near the rostrum, because the rostrum's strictly controlled in the SNP. Only those and such as those get anywhere near it. Whereas it was absolutely obvious from the start that at ALBA it was genuinely fair. And if you looked at how Tasmina convened and run each session, she was absolutely open. And MD, you know, who wanted to get to the rostrum, basically could get to the rostrum and make their argument. So
yeah.
Well, there was one man that didn't, but I don't know how, something went wrong there. I don't know what happened, whether his card got lost, but I don't know what happened. There was one guy who got a wee bit upset when he didn't get to the rostrum. I think it was he put in his card too late. But the other one, it was the topics. The other one, as we know, if you remember, one of the greatest debates ever at SNP conference was during Alec's time, of course, which was NATO, which Alec was in favour of. But the NATO debate this week, when, you know, NATO was getting well and truly battered by the ALBA delegates.
Roddy, I'm glad you mentioned.
Yep, I'm about to do that.
Because that was Angus Robertson who brought that one up, and I certainly know that at the time Salmon supported that.
He did.
I mentioned this because those with a closed mind out there will assume that anything Alex Salmon does, I'm a fan of. Well, no, I've been highly critical of some of the policies he's done, he's carried out, and some of the proposals he's made. Particularly one recently that I managed to discuss with him, and that was withdrawing our MPs out of London. You know, do what the Irish do, where their MPs can still actually represent their constituents. They can still lobby the MPs in London. They can still carry out their work, but they're not going to go through this absolute facade of pretending, you know,
that they're making a difference.
that they are in tune with the colonial masters in London in the cesspit that they call, you know, the Gothic cesspit that they call Westminster. And Alex Salmond was quite brusque with me. He said, "Oh, we need our politicians down there. They've got a job to do." Well, what's that job? It sounds to me like it's perpetual humiliation. Don't you think so?
Well, I mean,
Iain?
I'd like to know when they start, because they're not doing much of a job as far as I can see at the moment, other than Cozy Slippers wanting to be the next speaker. You know, I mean, really, come on. They're playing by London's rules. You know, if you're going to send down, you know, a team of SNP MPs, at the very least, they should be disruptive SNP MPs, and they should be looking for every opportunity to embarrass the Tory government down there. But instead, we are playing by their rules. We are doing what it's expected of a good public school body.
Good joke.
You know, just a team house jock, exactly. And I mean, we need to be.
Well, to my mind,
Are we a
to my mind, the intellectual, the intellectual capacity of our MPs in London is superior to the MSPs in Holyrood, and Nicola should be the first person to say, "Look, I need you guys and women, I need you around me."
Yeah.
But she's got them down here, and whether she likes them or not, and if it's Joanna Cherry, whom she doesn't like, she alienates them. You know, it's a really strange thing for someone to do. But in the end, our First Minister has no statecraft. The statesperson has never ever developed in her. She just doesn't seem to know how to handle these situations. She's either silent or she's negative. And it's very difficult to like someone like that and say, well, that's okay. That's just the way Nicola Sturgeon actually does her job. So,
if you look, Gareth,
sorry, Iain, on you go.
Get two of the most outstanding female MPs in London. One would make a fantastic Justice Minister in Scotland, and the other would make a fantastic Health Minister in Scotland. And we'd have the two best qualified, most able people in government making a difference here in Scotland. Instead, we'll get, you know, just absolute second raters, not even B-listers. These are Z-listers, some of them. I mean, really.
Well, they've had a long time to prove their worth. You know, if it was any other institution, and one was the CEO or the head of personnel, whatever, you take someone aside who had proved they weren't up to the job, and you'd say to them privately, you know, with discretion, look, there's a few things you've got really wrong here. You've been through the training course. We've given you 2-3 chances to get it right. We still value you, you know, as a member of this institution. So we'd like you to take a different job. We're going to give you a different job and bring someone else in who's got a bit more experience than you, rather than, you know, the kind of thing where people are saying, well, get rid of that person. You can do it with dignity, and you can do it so not actually throwing somebody out on their nose, unlike the SNP who, when they take a dislike to somebody, they just wait for the first bus to come by so they can push them under it. So that's how I would see it. And that, it seems to me to be the same thing as you apply to a group of MPs. If somebody isn't up to the job, move them, get them out of the job and get somebody who's more qualified in there. So I agree with you, Iain. That talent down in London is being squandered.
Absolutely.
I mean, must be most of our people up here, most of the public up here must barely know what they're doing down there, because the press doesn't promote it enough. So they may as well be up here dominating the media narrative.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing though, Gareth, is the two people I mentioned there both want to serve in the Scottish Parliament and made public that they wanted to serve. And what was the SNP reaction? It was to very quickly introduce a rule to stop them being able to do so. Now, that was inspired by Angus Robertson, because he didn't want Joanna Cherry getting the Edinburgh Central seat. But of course, he threw the baby out with the bathwater, and we created this general rule now that made it very, very difficult for any MP sitting at Westminster to change over to the Scottish Parliament. So right now, in the middle of a COVID crisis, where we could do with a really top-class health minister, and don't get me wrong, the previous health minister, I think, did a good job. But
when she was allowed to.
She was retired. Well, I mean, Nicola thinks health's hers. And it's hers until the figures turn by. And you'll not see so much of Nicola, just like what's happening these days.
Nicola's, time for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. That's her. She wasn't going to let have someone like Philippa, as talented as Philippa, coming up to do it. But the other one I want to talk about, which is, again, SNP would never have negotiated, and I was so happy, which was getting rid of the monarch. And as you guys know me, I'm a big Republican, so this was, for me, a great thing. But the fact, the bravery of putting that out there, because Brit Pretz, the Queen of England, how dare you say you don't want Elizabeth Saxe-Coburg Gotha?
I didn't include in that my call it a draft or call it a template constitution for Scotland, which I attacked like somebody might do as a passionate hobby, for a year and a half before I dared publish it. I omitted any mention of the monarchy except in the preface. And I did that because I'm not 100% sure that a majority of people in Scotland are yet ready to say we don't want monarchy. And I also did it because I thought nobody in any political party will ever bring this up at any meeting or conference. Well, there was ALBA motion on the table on the conference.
That's the price, though, the establishment pay for trying to keep ALBA out the news. ALBA's got absolutely nothing to lose. Coming out with policies that they know have got a broad level of support in Scotland, but none of the other parties dare say. So, it's not silly politics. And I mean, two things I think are vital in this. The first is that the Queen's not going to be around for much longer, the current Queen. And I think support for the royal family will diminish enormously. Certainly.
Well, Andrew will give a help up.
Charles would be a huge. I think even if he came Crown, it'd be for a day, and it'd be over to William, because I think the establishment know Charles is not acceptable. And the second thing I think is the Queen does not deserve support in Scotland. What she did with the accidental overhead conversation at Crathy Church, in 2014, as far as I was concerned, that ended any sympathy I had for the Queen whatsoever. I mean, that was a set-up from start to finish. And, you can't have a dishonest monarch running Scotland.
Well, they keep saying that the monarchy must not get involved in politics, but she did a very good job by proxy of getting rid of the Australian Prime Minister, who was just a bit too left-wing for her taste, and keeping her name, keeping her fingerprints off the process. But she certainly knew about it, and she certainly didn't complain when it was thrown out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, gentlemen, we're coming towards the end. As the time always flies in, especially when it's you guys. It really flies in.
I hate talking like this because it makes us sound like a group of negatives. Sitting here naysayers. Saying, if so and so come into my pub, I would say to them, but we're not. We're just people who are disillusioned with a party that has lost its radicalism, that has become the status quo, that has accommodated the British state because its head is colonial minded. And it's a great shame, you know, it's an absolute tragedy. So it's inevitable when a revolution is betrayed, other parties of liberty will arise and they'll keep prodding it and firing arrows and throwing darts, which is what people, parties like ISP and ALBA are trying to do. ALBA doesn't have any, conceits about running Scotland, but it certainly is going to let people know what the SNP is not doing and how it's closed down its options and opportunities.
Yep. I think the biggest challenge for ALBA is to get its message out there. And I mean, the entire power of the UK state and the power of the SNP are both aligned to try and stop that happening. Mm-hmm. And that makes broadcasts like this, makes our blogs very important, because they're the avenue where that information does get out. And if our readers and listeners spread that message, gradually it will begin to permeate through, and then you'll see big changes.
Could I just say before we go, I can now announce it, of course, because at 7:30... Well, yes, a drum roll. I am proud, flattered and honoured to say, and I'll tell you all, ladies and gentlemen, a quick story. I was sitting here having a wee sleep, and my phone went, and I answered the phone. I recognised the voice, but I couldn't think who it was, and they were talking. I was still trying to sort of waking up, and I said, I just couldn't think of it. Who is this? It's Alex Salmond, he said. And I was very embarrassed to say, sorry, Alec, I just don't expect Alex Salmond to phone me, but he was phoning me to tell me that I have been elected to the NEC. So I'm very flattered, very honoured, and I will, as I said to him, I'll say to any of the other people, I won't let you down.
Congratulations.
As I said before we went on air, between Gareth, the first honorary life member of ALBA, and Roddy McLeod, NEC member, I'm the only rebel left in this programme.
We keep being criticised as being yon oldians, so don't forget to take your fibrillator to the NEC meetings, Roddy.
I probably need to. It's the oxygen tank I need at the moment. I'm loaded with the coat. One of the reasons I didn't go to the conference on medical advice, because I have lung problems, and with the way COVID is, my doctors and my family got onto me, and as a sort of bonus, and for not going to conference, my son's come out. And they flew me out here and to Dubai to be with my grandkids, and I've caught the bloody cold. So, well, I can hardly. I'm coughing every 2 seconds.
On this health update last night, my granddaughter was diagnosed with COVID, so I picked an extremely good time to be out the country, and I've got to congratulate her on her timing. But she's not too badly affected by it so far. So. Hopefully she'll recover quite soon.
Give me 2 minutes, Roddy.
I'll give you as long as you need, my friend. You know that.
To finish on an upbeat. Please hold the line. We value your call. Yeah, thank God it's not a mandate. Hello, British Telecom. How can I help you? My name's Gareth, and I'm calling you from my home in Edinburgh. I've got an important event to attend in Greenock. Somebody's given me some sort of honorary award, and I'm afraid I'm at that sensitive age where I tend to fall asleep about midday. Could you give me a call? Sir, have I got this right? You're asking me to give you a wake-up call? Yes, maybe about 1 o'clock. A wake-up call. Well, how about England does not subsidise Scotland. Scotland subsidises England. Will that do, sir? Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed.
But I'd like to finish on a positive note as well. And the other honorary member, who I've never met, I don't know if you get the chance to meet her, Gareth, but she was magnificent, the 89-year-old lady.
Oh, she put us all to
lady,
shame.
Absolutely fabulous.
She put us all to shame, yeah.
I had met her before on Tartan Army trips, so I knew of her before that honour, but it was lovely to see her being honoured along with Gareth. First class.
But here's on a serious note, when you've got someone like that who was 60 years in the SNP, myself, I go back to 1968 when I first joined the party, and all the people that were in the hall in Greenock. I mean, how many hundreds of years of SNP services in that room? Huge. You would think someone in the SNP hierarchy would be going, wait a minute, we need to do this, because if you know in business, gentlemen, or if you're doing television or anything, or film, if the public aren't buying tickets to go and see a particular genre of films, you've got to go, maybe we've got this wrong. We need to, do it. They haven't done that. They're just keeping plodding on, shedding members, and I think soon shedding votes. But who else? So now that I'm in the NEC from now on, I want to be known as Mr. McLeod. I don't want any of this familiarity. You will book an appointment when you want to speak to me.
Absolutely, yeah. You'll need to wear that peak cap that you've got hidden under your desk there.
Yes. Yes. So anyway, I will thank you again, my friends, and I will speak to you all very, very soon. Keep enjoying your holiday, Ian.
I will do.
Don't get sunburned out, and I can't go out here. It's too bloody hot. I'm stuck indoors. I can't go out. It's just too bloody hot. And to you, Gareth, my friend, you just keep well and keep chirping and keep putting up those satirical ones. I like them. If you don't put them up, I'm going to get
the satirical news about the Indigenous people.
Make sure you don't miss them, because I look forward to them. That's my one of my highlights of the day. Shows you how my life is.
Our struggle against the blue coats of London.
So,
thank you, Roddy, for.
Well, thank you, my friends, and to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming and joining me with my two friends and colleagues, or maybe partners in crime would be a better way of describing them. And until I speak to you again, which will be on Sunday, I will have Professor Alf Baird as my guest. You all and yours, please take care.
All the best, Roddy. Cheers, Gareth. Nice talking to you again.
You too.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.